geographic markings on them that scientists can't really explain that look like this, and they can't really be explained as a water. What they see is giant water. I've got no theory for that, no joke. That's the most terrifying, cool thing I've ever heard. Like giant space or launch Saturn. Oh my gosh, that is the dead space which Lovecraft
Lovecraftian.
Charlie Project I never heard of before researching this video, but I'm glad I do now. Started by Megan Good in 2004.
Megan Good?
Database of every cold case missing persons. In 2004, it is a database of every cold case missing persons file in the United States, usually existing at more than 14,000. There's nothing that the site can really do to find these missing people, but it is a massive database for missing people in general. What normally happens after someone goes missing is the news and local police kind of stop the search for it. So Megan created this site as a means of maintaining some form of information about them. The cold cases on there date all the way from now to 1910. It exists not only as a database for investigators, as most are exclusive to, but also for any individual to look up and read. I, for one, went on there and clicked on a few stories of people local to my area, in which it gives their last known location, details about them and what they were seen doing, and some of them are rather haunting. I may do a video about this site because they exist off of donations, and I think it's an important and useful database. So stay tuned for that. But I'm glad I know about the Charlie Project. I think it's something that's worth your time if you're interested. And as a matter of fact, I'll link it below next to describe the video. Grain situation is another apocalypse theory. The idea being that across the world we've created all of these modified crops in order to feed people on a mass scale. These modified crops are resistant to everything from pesticide, insects, dehydration, natural competition, and so on and so forth. So, what would happen if one of these super plants ever decided to become competitive itself? What if a specific grass plant began to kill all the grass plant in its area and grow out and out and out?
The grain situation.
Dominates its ecosystem and ecosystems around it. Yeah, it could eventually progress.
One watching. One watching. If you have one, you can get multiple. There you go.
Behind us is that the sun, the Scion,
in the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
After High Command comes from supposed contact people have made channels. Channels are essentially people who believe that they have been given messages from extraterrestrials, and then they use that information to convey to others in order to deliver what said. We're calling testing. Essentially, as these lies. Yada yada yada.
In the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Ocean doesn't exist. Same as the sun being smaller than the Earth. Nope. I wish that would make me sleep a lot easier at night. One theory on this did kind of work as a theory. It's the idea that the ocean actually doesn't have a bottom, and instead there is a gravitational center within the Earth, that the ocean waters interflow and connect with each other, so technically the ocean is unlimited and underneath every continent. However, most research with this is just saying that it's a psyop. And it's like, well, if you ever went one side of the ocean to the other and kept track that you weren't flipped around or whatever, so you're just in a really big lake, which means technically, yeah, I guess the ocean is a really big lake, but you get the point. And if you did cross the ocean and keep track, well, I guess you're just in on it. Fed. It's another one of those, I didn't see it, therefore it's not true things. Geometric algorithmic shortcuts is referring to the fact that in geometry there are certain patterns that begin to show up more often. For example, if you're trying to diagram how people react in a sort of vacuum environment, it often comes out in a sort of ellipsis shape. There's beliefs that this is the reason the ellipsis is used as a symbol for infinity or the afterlife or what have you. And this theory goes on to say, well, our universe is made to be shaped like a thermodynamic reaction, or the entire solar system itself is made to look like a man. Or this all relates back to the ideas of sacred geometry and the idea that our greater intelligence is randomness and so shapes. Rather this also known as a spiral, represents the artist and architect, but Lutheran Hunter Foster is known for his idea that straight lines were awful in art, represented no creativity, and you should never use them. This again kind of relates to the idea of sacred geometry, as Hunter Foster kind of used the ideas of lines as an expression of life itself. However, what's interesting about this, so if you imagine flowing lines as they travel round about as an expression of life and carelessness, then a spiral would be life inevitably making itself towards one point that it can't escape. Basically, the idea that in his
And I die over the back and watch the tide fly.
Spirals being incorporated more and more into his works. The idea that through his artwork we can see how he
Hellfire,
the
that's my
inevitability
son.
of where he ended up. So if this idea of free-thinking geometry as a means of representing life is true, then a spiral can be used as a symbol of not only death and the inevitable, but an omen of badness itself. So some people have taken this idea and adapted it to the idea that spirals themselves are bad juju and you shouldn't look at them or have one around you. So again, if we apply this to the last concept of shortcuts and see that the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy, then what is that supposed to mean? File my energy. Actually, zero to five. Yep. Well, it's not true.
In the embrace of
Mesmer's flame.
Develop diseases later in life because they don't have a healthy immune system. Not because of tolerance or anything like that, as most people think, but because they just simply need more bacteria as a means of helping the immune system. Hive mind induction is a theory behind how we may be now hive mind. The idea being that
in the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
So for those that don't know, consciousness is kind of an anomaly in science. While we
Yes. What is consciousness? Where does consciousness come from?
factor of consciousness itself and the things that make up us as a person are kind of a mystery. Like, for example, there's no space in your brain for memory, or at least not. So the idea of physics every advanced. Jump up.
Mesmer, bye bye, Mesmer! Bad! Base!
Think of it this way. You're going about
Ponzi! Mesmer has fallen. Bye bye, Mesmez. Kind of want to do sit on your throne though. The side of Grace is pointing me this way. Grace of Gold is pointing me to this way. In the brace of Mesmer's flame.
That creates a bit of chaos. These beings from the future use that chaos as part of their banking system. Now go a step further and say seemingly totally random, supernatural, everything from UFOs to ghosts would just be these things from the future sort of mining our presence in the they don't have. They consider that in the future to more whatever reason, slight alterations in the timeline has been used well. The random things that happen to you aren't actually random. They are just a race of super people eons in the future using it to profit at your expense. So, nothing you can do about it. New ecology is accelerationism applied to ecology. The idea is that we are constantly hurting the Earth. So what we need to do is rapidly accelerate this hurting of the Earth so that the Earth can soft, and then we can worry about the next step. The goal of the acceleration of things having politics is the idea that we get into progress while we get downhill, so we might as well jump to the bottom so we can get there. This is that only with nature, so we need to jump to the mass extinction event of humanity, and then we can start. So we might as well get it over with while we can. MIRL is a reference to goals, which is sort of escape the body. And this is mostly just a joke or misinformation on here, as I talked about earlier. However, I did find one Reddit thread in which the person recommended that they should wear dark clothes and throw out all that they have in the face, and that'll do it. So, okay. Mogo Maya is one of the channels supposedly did that with several extraterrestrial bodies and have written many books about these missions. There's a lot of expansive stuff that's into his work with and the idea of airborne events for the aliens to do things, I guess. And he exists as a modern example of the chain. Nuclear theory is the concept of ley lines applied to nuclear science. For those that don't know, ley lines is the idea that centers that sort of flow, that's the flow. A lot of theories within say that ancient civilizations purposefully place their structures, temples on these ley lines, conscious of it as some sort of greater spiritual vision intended supposedly after the nuclear strikes at the Earth at the end of World War II, the second incident of the idea being that such a massive energy expansion once caused a sort of second flame of ley lines to be folded or be created another big up this next no sides, no sides, Bigfoot account. Basically, the idea that the reason supernatural occurrences have proliferated so much in the 21st century. Tier 8 is titled The Reality Map. Description is at extreme depths, the very structure of reality has no limitations. Control the flow and having mastered the world and those around you. One last question remains. Can you master yourself? D-patterning is closely related to a concept known as psychic driving. Essentially, psychic driving works like this. It is a concept that by taking a person and making them listen to the same sounds and words and tones this is all working off of the idea that a personality is developed by an individual and is slowly built up as that person matures, which means therefore constructed, or in other words, there are methods of this occurring in all traits within this. There are people that showing someone specific visuals or maybe things. Audio streams forward, backwards, another way will eventually cause them to hit themselves. So that's psychic driving. D-patterning is everything I just said with electric shock therapy and LSD. D-patterning is something personality. It's also trying to dig all the way down to your subconscious. The idea being a combination of electric shock therapy and drugs could allow the observer to speak to the bottom level of the person's psyche. Take that a step further, some apply to semi-sexual with the idea being there are very subtle tones and secret messages, and simply backtracking, hidden in a lot of people as it means less docile, slowly chipping away at all the higher on the earth with guys and sex. However, the truth being that you have to think once yourself. So the original as it was an actual definition in the 1700s, the idea was this British government to start an organization that would allow people to themselves to decide what happens. This was done by having different infiltrating government and proliferating the ideas that wanted across governments. However, the original standard of self-governance is the same that made this purpose was to make sure that to paint and consider history as a conspiracy. So, before all which would be the result of centuries-long smear campaigns against the proliferated by governments, and this demonization that they have done against the organization would be a means of making themselves seem the good guys in a historical context. The Illuminati, of course, assuming they do, would have to exist from the shadows, and therefore hid themselves open. So think it this way. If the Illuminati is real, and they're working behind the scenes of all governments, who's to say that, it's not like the government lie to us about a group of people who they don't lie. I mean, the government has to have they should have to decide that across the world at the border disasters. I see small hopefully description of the same expression that either short, stumpy, possibly figures and symbols across the The most famous examples of this being 9/11 and the Silver Bridge incident, which, after both of them, several witnesses reported seeing small people crawling across the rubble. Theories of these creatures range from everything that they are these evil sort of demons that enact natural disasters, or bad, I guess, or that perhaps these things are summoned by the parties in question to get across whatever one. Or perhaps these things are summoned by the parties that actually committed the disaster Because if you think about it, if demons and demons say stuff. What is fate is insane that use the information. A lot of this relates back to shadow dimensions. Because if there's things that exist in this physical realm that regulate about like this that makes sense that some people, and if that's true, in several other forms that disagree, that's public over what have you, could actually be overused or important. Like we talked about yeah, US was going to start it, obviously. I'm just going to start with that. I guess we're going to where we're taking entirely baseless claims like the plague, right? Those people weren't killed by a disease. No, it was giants and also Hitler. And then I'll just turn off the comments and say that anyone who disagrees with me is in on the conspiracy. Tesseract Earth or universe is referring to the shape of the tesseract. So we understand the universe in dimensions, that being height, width, and depth, right? This is often shown to be example of a square. If you have a flat square, that's two-dimensional because it goes height and length. If you have a cube, that's three-dimensional because it's height and depth. The idea of the tesseract is that it is a four-dimensional cube, which means that it would exist in a dimension that we can't observe. As you're probably aware, if you're integrating the iceberg at this point, there are several theories about different dimensions that we can't directly see as people, but they would still exist nonetheless. The most common of which being time and the idea that it can be manipulated. However, we existing as people can just pass through at one case in one direction. So the tesseract existing as a four-dimensional square, when applied to the Earth universe, implies that there is inherent dimension properties that we can't exactly understand. In other words, either the planet we live on, the universe we exist in, is going to be a lot more complex than we can see. And perhaps anomalies, which could be everything from random explosions to supernatural sightings, could just be the results of these fourth-dimensional occurrences that we can only catch glimpses of. Oh boy, this one. So as soon as I started this iceberg and scrolled through it real quick, this was like the first one I saw, and I was thinking, there is no way I can do this, but I'm about to. Remember how in Tier 2 of this iceberg?
Yeah? I don't know. Yeah, it was at 7:30 on Saturday. The grace of gold is pointing me there. I want to see this in its heyday. This place is beautiful. It's quiet. Peaceful. What the fuck?
way back before I was a YouTuber and all. I talked about quantum suicide and immortality. The reason I spent so much time talking about it is to justify this. In the theory of quantum suicide and immortality, on activity can happen, will happen in the one-dimensional universe.
Yes.
This string theory is to be believed, and if the idea if the universe is to be believed, then that means every possible outcome has to exist within one of these worlds, which, as I explained with quantum suicide and immortality, that means for every individual there has to be a universe where they live at theoretically forever,
Forever,
and a universe
yeah.
in which they commit not alive at every possible point forever and ever. So that means in one existing universe, there has to be a version where John F. Kennedy
Shot
committed
himself.
suicide while in the motorcade at Dallas. So who's to say that we aren't that universe? Perhaps that's why the CIA was so weird about it. Because at the height of this political turmoil with Russia, how awful does it look if a leader commits suicide? What if, as Lee Harvey Oswald said, he was the patsy because they needed an excuse? What if the pressure of being the leader of one of the world's superpowers was too much for JFK to take it in? And what if he wanted to go out during the day, or he was watching? That or he just ran through on the street on the fucking car and killed him. Just really good time. What was the best thing about going suicide and immortality? That had to happen somewhere. Might as well be here. And you literally can't fight me on it. Because that's how the theory works. Everything that can happen happens somewhere. So here it is. And for anyone in the comments calling me stupid for it, well, guess what? They work for the CIA. See, it's that easy.
Right.
Mao statues were wrapped in lions, which probably that's not again, sorry. Which these statues are basically island statues. He wants the first settlers of the Adventure Islands.
It's so annoying.
According to modern physical statues, literally islands were the original founding. So, the circulating that these old founders of the died when they set in their place as the statues. Now, while those normies would take this to mean that the statues were top of the rapids, graveside or perhaps their land, some people believe that perhaps the statues and the statues at all were quite literally the fossilized remains of these first people, or, in other words, giants. So the Easter Island statues are frozen giants, just like JFK shooting himself. Cannot tell me. That hacker has to be so when you think about not necessarily reasons for the fact that they can use to quantify every known occurrence within the known universe, or the fact that we can do things like make equations to figure out how the speed of light blah 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 or whatever. What the theory is saying is that
Get me out of here.
use of numbers one could gain the ability in order to manipulate reality itself. Or in other words, secrets of the universe or the secrets of the simulation we're in. Some would say with this theory, because there's another bigger theory that numbers are the lines of code that exist in our computer, but that's for another day. Math could be used to act, basically. No meaning of RPG was so weird kind of information. So it was a role-playing game called Hybrid that was canceled in 2002. Well, the existing text file of it is a rule set that the author says is roughly 30% complete of Hybrid's cancellation. Reading through this thing, not only is it absolutely massive, but it just seems like sort of insane rankings. Like, for example, there are over 500 rules, and the rules are really weird, and they cross-reference each other, so like one rule you have to scroll down to like 178, and then that rule is just some talk about how politics works. So then you go back up to 3, and then it says you have to jump down to 400, and the whole thing kind of looks like that. Several of the rules are just very long equations for things like how gravity interacts in the sphere. Really weird specific stuff. Now, it's like, for example, one part the author begins talking about the matrix and how important it is to understand the wall of the simulation within. That goes back to the theory that the real meaning of the hybrid RPG was to create a rule set for the world we exist in, or to create a rule set for a simulation of the world we exist in, or we're the simulation, and these are some of the rules for where we exist. That would explain the talk of politics. That would explain why the Matrix and the simulation were brought up. and why equations for how gravity works and very specific concepts of physics can be brought up. The idea being that this RPG itself was perhaps a look through the cracks at what our reality actually is, or a warning to us of what our reality actually is. Deep soy is closely related to the weaponized pinboard thing I talked about in the last year. So in that theory, it was the idea that soy is used on other countries as a means of immobilizing their masculine population. Whereas deep soy is saying that perhaps the government would do that same thing with the people. The idea being that higher ups planted this idea of societal laziness. Or in other words, everything is about looking at a screen, setting down nothing, and letting other people take care of issues for you. And according to the theory, this leads to everything from obesity rates going through the roof and a reliance on law enforcement, as well as a trust of elected officials. Or, in other words, people want someone else to take care of the problems because they themselves have been taught to not take care of their own problems. So, the idea of deep soy is perhaps governments are immobilizing the people as either a means of just putting domination over them or preparation for some final step of some kind. My money's on the weaponized fitness thing, but I guess we'll have to find out. I don't know if I can say this word on YouTube. Probably not. So, whether prostitution stars refers to prostitution. That's all pretty much China knows what the prostitution, but Tibet does not really agree. Put it into perspective, prostitution is so rampant in some parts of Tibet that in some of the cities I was reading about, 10% of the women are involved in prostitution, which 10% itself may not seem like a lot, but think if any city that you're familiar with had 10% of the people as prostitutes, what that would mean not only for the economy, but of the societal economy. Now again, it's illegal, so all of these are officially recognized as laws, so in that whole 10% thing, that's 10% of places where it's a traffic which means the actual number is probably high. So the whole thing is, that elitist circles and governments like to do not so nice things to people that don't. I'm talking about the Epstein stuff. So the idea being that perhaps China knows that it's such a rampant problem in Tibet, but lets it go because it's a means of using them to tell that they oversee this. In other words, China doesn't do anything about it because our after that last one, channel, yeah, we're talking about a weird one. It's fine, it's just jokes. Haha, jokes. Fire is alive is a concept that fire itself is alive. For one, think about
Fire, it spreads. It can be extinguished. It has properties of life. It reacts to certain things.
hard concepts of response. How many of the fire is alive with? It reproduces. It grows on its own. It maintains a homeostasis thermal temperature to its own. It moves on its own. And it needs an experience on its own as well. Really, I would think that it doesn't have fires at this moment themselves. But as we talked about earlier on this chart, themselves work not one concepts of energy, supernatural things from another dimension that simply pierce through the veil occasionally as energy creatures can be seen with fire itself. Or at the very least, perhaps how plasma is formed within fire and is a constantly replicated energy source that could be the secret to other forms of life outside of our understanding. Eating food makes you age. While this is apparent on the chart, is technically true because if you don't eat, you'll die. You won't get any older. So, checkmate ideas. I mean, technically, like, aging is caused by cutting the body as not dying. And technically, the energy that is healthy so that energy simply saying that conversation is often Specifically, the way that organizations cover up stuff about it is off. Like, for example, there were satellite images of what appeared to be a sphere that was seen in a satellite, which governments collectively all wanted up. And someone pointed out there was a that very simple ship about that. It's just and if you're familiar with the until you have that, all of the questioning of the all the point was shut up and secret operation also started with all the purposes for seconds. Keep in mind that government's just on the same only just a great slam. It's this hundreds of thousands of mile device and there's nothing more to look at. Just governments that say normal people can go to the island without government approval. I use island loosely. This thing's like one of the largest continents on the planet. And all the other misdirection, weird secrets that have to do with it. And it makes you wonder. And the more research I do about all this crazy stuff, the more I realize, maybe all those textbooks that I've read that have said it's just a solid ball, there's nothing underneath it besides us, are real. But if you've ever looked at like a forest rock that is full of holes because it has water and stuff on it, and you think that it's like 75% water on it, and then you think that I'm sure there's nothing beneath us, it's just straight, solid rock, and everything that benefits through, and it's definitely not giant. And I am going off the radar effectively. 1800s technology, while vague, there are some really crazy concepts in it. See, in the early 1800s, before we discovered how cool electricity was, technology was going a whole different direction. Like, for example, in the early 1800s, there was a prototype of something that was phonorays, which were essentially sunglasses that would put on would supposedly show the aura of the person. By that, there's concepts that doused special products that and it makes you think of if it wasn't for electricity on the path, where you that means your dogs are the legend of the Africa, which essentially states that that died as a passive form of small dogs. They have been about 5 months themselves. A lot of person accounts are in Africa. Himself while riding his vehicle earlier that asking the child asked what the dog was next to him, and of course he couldn't see the dog. To which shortly afterwards, the guy writing this story died. So that's not weird at all. And while the concept of it may be scary, in most traditions I read, it seems as if this is seen as not necessarily a good thing, but a peaceful thing, as if the small dog died for comfort and passion for his life. More wellness has to be good so what's interesting is a lot of times it's sort of whereas more wellness is saying they are all parts or individuals in the actual experiment that's happening, which is the world. Or in other words, all occurrences that have ever happened are part of one continuous string that we are still on, which would mean that no real change or behavior from previous example is possible for the whole those who did this group sort of inevitable over repeat the same thing because we're still all part of the same experience. Which all my types of simulation because perhaps the whole setup has this program all this. I mean, look at me, I'm fake. I just box right. I'm just out how we're actually experiencing. I'm probably fake, but I may not. See this conflict now? This is the real life. Yeah. let's go back to Chile, where and almost caused a super bad historical tour of history short essentially capitalism down and really fast. All our supplies, all the missiles, which it was, they just knocked the thing down and had a merchant one with a merchant that's important. How do you do this all goes back to the idea that and has needs for say, yeah. So this is what step further. It says perhaps it's purposeful. That's why every else is down because it's happening. And perhaps there's someone cross over to another dimension.
Remember it's Boss movie.
Which honestly, if you think about it, has anything been normal since 2011?
The worst remembrance Boss 7.
Yeah, this one's fun though. I like the idea that there's an agency in the future that time travel is such a problem. They're like, oh, we'll go back in time and make there be a lot of money. And then it's just like bear traps set up for people who go back in time. Yeah, this one's fun. I like it. But psyops don't exist with the current psychological operations. This can have a lot of different definitions. However, the most common one is the idea of sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, it's like this. Say that I tell you about the Illuminati, and I say that there's this super evil group of people who work in world governments. And then you get really worried about the Illuminati, so you get all your rich super elitist friends together and say that you all have to go proliferate world governments to make sure nothing bad happens. Which means, because of me telling you that and you trying to react to it, you have created the thing that you were afraid of. Or, in other words, paranoia of what might go wrong causes things to actually go wrong. And there's no fake stories that exist if people just keep making the boogeyman that they're afraid of. Vertical universe is the counterpoint to a horizontal universe. So say that we're moving through time in existence, and everything's kind of flat, like we can move from side to side. What if it's actually vertical? Or in other words, we are moving in a directly straight line with the existence above us and below us, something that we can't really reach. While this kind of falls in line with a very narrow existence of the universe, as some physicists think that we are in, you can take it a step further and say perhaps ideas of deities and demons are just people in either the future or past who have mastered a way to get to higher or lower planes of existence.
What?
For kind of the concept, we exist as we're walking through a very long skyscraper, and some people have figured out to go to floors. Prophecies Enforcing Agency is the idea that there are organizations throughout history whose sole purpose is to make sure that prophecies come true. A lot of these series relate back to the Bible, and specifically the predictions of Revelation that there will be a government in this place and a government doing this, and this will happen as in line with the end times. And perhaps organizations like the Illuminati or the Freemasons are simply existing behind the scenes to make sure things go to plan. And then I guess it would depend on if these predictions are good or bad, if things like the Illuminati or the Freemasons would be good or bad. And if you look at some of the predictions from the Bible, some of those things are eerily true. So perhaps there are secret people we just go back to the whole idea of prison Earth, or the idea that we are not native to this planet, and that the moon itself is so our consciousness and our understanding are regulated to make sure we don't get out of sight of our containment. And this also can be in relation to the commonly thought question of what comes first, thought or language, because some people consider it to be impossible to have thought without language, but like, what do you think people who have never heard a language do just don't think? So perhaps these greater overlords that have us in prison here aren't just monitoring where we go or what we do, but also how we think. Penergic men or penergic people is a reference to special people who have existed throughout history. See, the word penergic itself basically means multiple skills or someone that can accomplish several tasks. And it's basically saying that people throughout history who have accomplished certain skills that higher technological advances are in themselves a higher person. And most of the theory of this also go back to simulation theory and say that perhaps every time that we become stagnant in our simulation, and so that characters are good without knowing it as a means to cause people to move or cause things to happen. Or in other words, protagonists are randomly set up throughout human history as a means of keeping the story interesting. Human immortality, as it's referred to on the iceberg, is tied to something known as the infused amnesia theory. Essentially what it's saying is that the body itself does when you die, consciousness lasts forever. Or in other words, it essentially forms as a sort of essence. And it's been the jobs of secret societies throughout history as a means of placing them in their new place. So basically, the soul isn't necessarily a soul that passes on in the afterlife after death, and it's instead physically given to whatever the next body will be. And furthermore, information of this getting out to the public has led to theories throughout history such as reincarnation. So in other words, humans are immortal, but the body itself is not. Elite controls the population with their permission, has to do with an overarching idea of the New World Order. Basically, the higher-ups develop ways in order to thin out populations, whether it be disease every 100 years or wars over points that they don't actually care about. So in other words, if two governments come to the agreement that they need to thin out the herd, one will pose a fake threat to the other so that way they can go to war and lower their population numbers. This also applies further into saying that pushes in the media for people to have less children and the fabrication of scarcity are really bad fabrications. And if you'll remember earlier in the conversation, that said the population is at 5 million. The media way of getting to that. Bugsy on this iceberg is referring to the movie Bugsy, which is a movie about the gangster known as Bugsy Siegel. Bugsy Siegel was the monster who was killed by the mob because he was supposedly stealing money and incorrectly money. Bugsy renovated and began the Flamingo Casino in Las Vegas, which at the time was pretty much just a water hole in the middle of the desert, and many believe Bugsy as being the one who made Las Vegas what it is. However, it's with these funds that he got from East Coast mafia groups in order to start and renovate the Flamingo Hotel that he started to scrape money off the top, which of course they didn't like. So then he was murdered and went down his history as being a bad guy who started one of the most famous cities in America. The theory is that the movie Bugsy, which portrays him as a sort of charismatic gangster archetype in movies, was created in order to take prejudice away from the ideas of Sin City itself. Or, in other words, Las Vegas, which is known as the City of Sin and has gambling and all that stuff, didn't want their image tied in with an evil gangster, so they made a propaganda piece so people felt better about the city itself. TimeCube was a website developed by Gene Ray in 1997. And to be honest with you guys, Gene is an absolute crackpot. Basically, the gist of what he said time itself is not working line, and is instead 4 sides that we travel through. Because of this, every single day, 96 hours actually occur, we only experience 24, whereas the other hours are experienced in those respective timelines. So basically, you can think of this as string theory or alternate realities, only instead of like infinite, it's just 4. It goes on to say that at midday and midnight, the sun and moon in each of these realities are perfectly in sync with each other, and people cross over into other ones without realizing it. So basically, the explanations of the Mandela effect and stuff like that are due to people accidentally crossing over whenever all 4 things line up. I also have to mention, because I can't not mention this, he said that standing at each of the corners as guardians were Jesus, Einstein, Socrates, and Bill Clinton. If you ever experienced the Mandela effect and think you may have gone into an alternate reality, blame Bill Clinton. Technocracy theory is something in itself that's kind of theorized, the idea that the world itself is run by technology. However, this is specifically saying that an AI system runs everything. The idea being that over the years, as we become reliant on technology, the higher-ups or elitists have built machines in order to tell us what to do. This all has to do with the illusion of choice. So, say, an election, for example, you may vote expecting the candidate to get it, whereas the AI has already predicted the best minutes and decided what's going to happen. The idea behind it being the free will throughout time is manipulated for comfort, and that now in these final stages of being built for ourselves, the AI makes every decision, but we give away so much free will at this point we can tell. Let It Go is a Native American legend that has to do with the spirit of selfishness. The basic idea behind this is that it is a virus that can infect people if people allow it to, that makes someone become more self-desired and individualistic instead of caring for the community. The root word of Wendigo is the same root word for Wendigo, whereas the Wendigo has to do with someone cannibalistic and the desire of gluttony that overtakes them. Wendigo is essentially the same thing applied to greed and pride, which Wendigo, I definitely haven't heard of that ever. What this is saying in the grander sense is perhaps this disease of the Wendigo has affected entire countries or potentially the world at this point, as over the last couple of years, society has gone from the idea of forward progression as a whole, and instead looks at progression in itself. So basically, a soul virus has made us all bad people, which isn't the weirdest on this iceberg. Alright, so I've got to be careful with this one, not because it's any, like, oh no, the government's going to come shoot me for it, but this is like a real group of people, and I'm pretty sure I know what this conspiracy is hinting at, but at the same time, it's not, like, proven anywhere, and I don't want to, just be mean. Off the coast of North Carolina, there is a group of actually involved. It's because they are on an island involved in the island. So these guys have a website, they have a homeowners association, everything's fine until you start to look at some of the things being involved in association. Like, for example, reading about the some controversy where after a hurricane, the association managed to sort of apply reasons. And it's another thing to point at a modern group of people and just be like, aha, you're crime, because there's really no evidence of that. And I don't want to be mean. Like, everything on the surface seems like they're sweet people, and I feel bad for a YouTube channel just looking at their stuff and being like, I can make a problem here. Water is not from Earth. It has to do with the concept of the creation of water itself. For one, water itself is evolved constantly. If you think it in itself is naturally acidic, well, then water that is formed over and over. There doesn't seem to be a sort of jumpstart process that would keep that in place. So theories range from everything that perhaps a meteor hit the Earth that either had oxygen and hydrogen with it, that then connected the atmosphere and created this batch of water, or that water itself as a whole came to the planet from an outside source, which, if that was true, that water came from somewhere else, then that would imply the existence of life somewhere else. Basically, the idea that water was deposited here rather than created here. RuneScape conspiracies is specifically referring to the most famous RuneScape conspiracy around New York City. The idea being that RuneScape itself exists as a New York City counterpart. Evidence of this is everything from the game consists of large different ethnicities that come from separate boroughs. There's forms of begging, there's different ways to make money, and the richest, most often are those who play the stock market. People inherently can't be trusted, and there's a selfishness when it comes to greed and trying to obtain money within the game, which is kind of mean to the workers, but whatever. There are events and functions that occur in which people gather and celebrate before going back together. And there's even an underground trading system throughout the map. So the theory states that perhaps RuneScape was put together as a means of testing the ability to post-apocalypse in the city. And it goes even further and says that perhaps RuneScape was created by the government as a way to monitor either transaction as it corresponds to the real world, or potential transaction if New York City was to fall apart. So if you've ever played RuneScape, I guess you work for the Fed. So congratulations. concrete audacity has to do with a mind located in Chile. In 2013, roughly 35 people witnessed what they all know the road from itself. Stay there for a few minutes and fit the typical description of this open saucer. However, while the flying saucer was above them, people looked around them and saw several what appeared to be concrete people standing in their midst. They were all gray, made of stone, and were all sharing their same position looking up at the flying saucer. As people began to panic, the flying saucer left, and with it, the concrete people just disappeared. Theories on this have ranged from everything to ancient religions to perhaps extreme forms of themselves, and of course, which is always so lame. I hate whenever it's like, it's like you ever get out of the house. Codification is one of those that because it's just one word and good luck figuring out. Because codification is a real thing. It means that, but with the rest of the side, I feel like there should be some giant multi-level code that creates your count all of this. Basically, codification is a term that is applied to other governments, counties, and people in order to vote. Basically, if they look at issues in the state voting, voting population, other decided that change in order together with it. This form of has like different whenever people begin to band together, it's changing the course of the so this is the last way. One, so we did exactly that. Upside down. In other words, for us, a lot of our wrongs, there is a consistency of a group of normal people who understand upright, surrounding, and payers upside down. Now, one person has interpreted this as a form of art. Others have pointed out the weirdness that it appears in other cultures in a similar way. And in some of these that have descriptions attached, such as images of it, there's references to the window, soil, and stuff. So, being upside down and from the ground to sky, that sounds like Hollow Earth to me. And, normally, these inverted people are, like all the ground, all ground, it sounds to me like kind of languages references. The Italian language over time, have they changed? Now, this isn't enough that, like, a human transformed their physiology to speak Italian. It's enough that the testing this has been found in instances around other languages too. This goes back to the idea that languages themselves have a sacred meaning, and that some languages have the power to produce life in different forms. This is a big reason that ancient spells and things like that are said to be done in Latin or other languages, because the language itself has a hidden biological power. So in other words, words spoken in certain language can induce a literal soulful or life energy that another language cannot. Saint Alden's Creations is in reference to the video game developer Saint, and specifically the creation of Schnell One. You can find footage of Schnell, but it's a sort of weird multiplayer game. Several have compared to the second one, never just sort of interacting with each other. However, there's a lot of things like physical violence and even terrorism. And while I myself don't gameplay on it, people online who said that there were even games that kids. So people have said perhaps this game exists as a means of an outlet for terrorists and hits. On top of that, there's a credit trading system which people will convert into real money in the real world. But there's even an idea that much money or I should say, transactions or illegal goods that are hidden. Now, this is all, of course, like tier A conspiracy, not actually correct. The creator of this game, this is all like through the grapevine. I'm sure that's not actually what it's for, but be nice. But yeah, that's the theory. 90% of books written by one author. It can say that there's some guy who's existed for like 800 years who's just been currently writing books, although at this point why not? But this ties back into the simulation theory. Put it this way, right? You've been in a bookstore. So you've seen like amount of paperbacks that have totally unrecognizable titles that shelves. Well, several of those things are fill-ins that are made in order to enhance the simulation. And realistically, there's no way to that's not and then try every book in the local bookstore. And then another one. There's eventually going to be pages somewhere that you aren't getting to, and that those are just filler, because according to this, whatever you do look at, the simulation prepared for it and put real words there. So try not to let that bug you. CCA-XX1 is in reference to the launching of the Zuma satellite. Basically, the Zuma satellite was a satellite that was launched by SpaceX. However, the details around it are really shady. Like, for example, the creators of the Zuma satellite never wanted themselves to be known, and neither did they. And supposedly CCA-XX1 is code that was given to whatever was on board. Theories say that perhaps whatever on board is a form of biological testing, more specifically testing on amoebas in order to create a sort of super amoeba. And again, at this point, it's really hard to connect things, but a lot of people tie the Zuma satellite into the concept of brain amoebas, which when you think about it, brain-eating amoebas are like really weird things. It's like the fact there's like trillions and quadrillions of amoebas everywhere that at any point don't cause any harm, except a few are just amoebas. So this is saying that perhaps those amoebas here, and the Zuna satellite is either a means of maintaining them or enhance them somehow away from Earth. The Holy Grail found centuries ago is in reference to the Holy Grail and the idea that perhaps elitist queens have been using its power for a long time. Historically, the Holy Grail is the chalice that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. And the idea around it is that if anyone drinks from the Holy Grail, they'll have eternal life, knowledge, and a whole slew of other abilities. The idea being that historical figures have been drinking and getting the power of the Holy Grail for hundreds of years, and the reason that secret societies are able to be maintained for so long and continue so efficiently despite having a rotating list of members is because the highest up members have been eternal and there from the start. Bovine hormone conditioning has to do with another level of population control. So you know how you hear that in recent
How
years,
to clear the Foglift catacombs.
Injected into cows is making people sick. Well, the main explanation that you hear from that is that growth hormones are put in them in order to make them grow faster, so that way they can put out more meat. However, this theory is saying perhaps they don't.
Alright, Little Caesar says free delivery, there's no catch.
Wait, that's what we do. I catch football.
Alright, today we're going to go down and get through the fog rift, the fog rift pipe. There's sport rift, there's the bridge, basically all the way down here, head on side. I'm not going to get you guys ready. If you want to explore the whole thing, you can, but I will get you to the boss. I'll get you really quickly. At the bottom, make sure you grab this brace, of course. Head this way. And then we're going to take the left path. Head in here, now be careful. Above you there's one of these death traps. They don't kill me in a shot. I don't know if they'll kill you in a shot. But they also don't kill the enemies in a shot, so I'm not sure how strong the actually is. But I don't want to get hit. So yeah. Keep going. Start with that guy.
You're gonna get hit.
Head deeper in. Go around the corner. This guy's going to shoot bolts at you. If you got range, you can take him out. But honestly, I'm just run past him because he's got this ricochet magic missile shit. It sucks. Go down here. Again, deal with any enemies behind you. You don't want them catching up to you. And there is a spot here, catacomb. So I'm guessing we give it to a dragon now. But I don't know. But anyway, head down further. There's going to be another spike trap. This one does lucky draw, and then we jump on top of it and it'll bring us to a higher level. That's not. And I think there's a. This dude, homeboy up here, yeah, got that magic missiles and he shoots magic repeatedly. We're not quite magic missiles because they're not always hit. But when we hit you, we rise, we go. Anyway, go out. Left, two, right, left, not three. Three, step, that's it. Once you make it to the stairs, there's going to be 3 of those police bad guys. So be ready for that. Stay over the stairs. You don't have to worry about getting hit with the missiles. Go then. But inside, remember that there's more enemies down there. So grab up a loot and then I have to die. So that goes first. There we go. Go through this house mode. Then I bring it. Let it drop. Move it. The elevator. I believe the boss is right down here. Yeah, it's like a lightning skeleton death knight with 2 axes. You get it to do that. But it's really fast. But I was going to do it to allies, but won't be just fine. Knocking him. If I let him get his rhythm, he tore me up. But if I kept interrupting him, I was okay. It's hard for me to be like, what do you do? Because I'm level 200. I don't know what level 200. So, aggressive. I'll make it to the second. Here we go. Hey, what? You got me down. Yeah, you already got me down. Go. You already got me down. Go. You already got me. Okay, you already got me down. But did he get 10 free bonus wings? Yeah.
Oh, what? Fuck am I?
Today we're going to go around and get through the fog rift catacombs. There's sport rift, there's the bridge, and then take said elevator and you'll be down here. This dude, homeboy up here, kept interrupting him. I was okay. Well then, but if you go to the other side, remember that there's more enemies down there. So grab up a loot, and then I actually die here because I forgot there's more. Anyways, go through this archway. Another boomer. Let it drop. Keep it.
Maybe what, bro? Like, you should have told me that.
Boss is right down here. Yeah, it's like a lightning skeleton death knight with 2 axes. You get him for beating him. Then he moves good.
Get him for beating him. Do this quick. Oh, this motherfucker just took all my health. What? What do you mean get something? What do you mean get something? What do you mean?
Hi.
What do you mean get something? What do you mean get something, Mom? What do you mean get something? You said, do you want to get something here before the game? What does something mean? Give me your heart, boy. Did I just get a Crimson Ember Medallion?
We need to go do tanks.
By the utmost.
No, over here.
By the utmost, he said.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right here. Yeah, that's right here. I got med bay. Yeah, I have med bay. I can undo med bay. So if I undo med bay, that undoes it for somebody else. So if I do this one, right? And I do this one like this. Right. We're doing this one. Watch the green bar. Right. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and done. So anything to make people see. Hey, right there, welcome back to Crazy Craft, where today we are going to end the reign of the Kraken. So, a few of you guys made some suggestions, and a few others of you reminded me of episode 19 of my.
What I'm trying to do is get here, but I can't get there because I don't know how to get there. Like, I'm really confused, bro. I'm really damn confused. I know where that's at. Yeah. Dude, I'm trying to get there, but it's not working. I literally was here. I literally was just here, dude. I literally was just here. I literally was just here, bro. It's just not gonna work. Dude, I literally was just here. Motherfucker. Fuck you, get this rock. Banana fish is on here. Should I watch Banana Fish? Ghost Stories. Oh my god, Ghost Stories is on here? Oh my gosh.
Think of a big black man chasing you.
That's what Ghost Stories says. Think of a big black man chasing you. That's what Ghost Stories is, bro. Tough. Monkey King. Vampire Knight. Vampire Knight. Karu. Kotori. That's hard. Suzuki Cousin Zero. What? My girlfriend's a show, bitch. Ghost in the Shell. Bro, I'm trying to freaking read the damn anime, so I can't because these niggas. Ooh, that Evangelion. I don't really know much about Evangelion. I'll watch it later in life. That's almost 12 years long. Well, Kashi was. Stop. Don't go stray dog. Okay. You told me to ride it like a rental. It's just a rental. That's what K is. She told me to ride it like a rental. It's just a rental. I'm not with all the sentimentals. Just keep it simple. You wanna know what I'm into? She can get into it. I ain't trying to get into it. I done been through it. Niggas tell me that don't kill me. Nike just. Like I'm like genuinely like I do not know how to get over there. Like getting me upset.
Toxins are purposefully deposited in the code.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to get all the... Then you get to this water area over here. So this water area right here, we're going to the top left of the map for you. Now to unlock the middle right section of the map, to get to this map fragment location in the map fragment right over here, which is going to reveal the top. I'm going to show you how to uncover it by getting to this location over here where the map fragment is. Now to get here, you actually have to start here from the high road cross-sided brace, and we're going to hit towards the east until you get to this water area over here. So this water area right here, we're going to head north and follow along the pathway to get to this location right here. So from my location here, go ahead and follow me.
It's the erdtree.
This is the ancient ruins base inside of Grace. And you can keep following me towards the southwest. And you should find the map fragment right over here, which is going to reveal the top left of the map for you. Now to unlock the middle right section of the map to get to the
What the what's the what the what's the Oh, now I'm here. Bang. Fudging. Bang. Can I get W's in the chat? W's in the chat. W's. Type. I got 297 comments on my shit because I'm type. Spam them W's, yep. Spam them W's, yep. Like, yeah. Kind of getting bored of this shit though. Cool DLC weapons, no spoilers. Arguing, of course. Itachi Uchiha.
Did I just create this?
24 or 36.
You know that new sound you've been looking for? Well, listen to this. I'm a real musician.
50 centimeters in inches.
My shy porch.
It's just maybe 20 inches. It's not even going to be that big. It's only even bigger because that would be about that.
The lengthening and the rolling attacks, so it's very comparable to the black bow that works the exact same way, but it actually is going to get more damage and gets a really good.
Fire Knight's Great Sword, Sword of Light.
Number 23, the Sword of Light. This is a holy based straight sword, which does get very bad scaling to singing strength and it being faith. Its weapon skill also does horrendous damage for a really long animation that you can get stacked.
Turn!
Going to be more useful, whereas for debuffs, they individually apply to every enemy.
That sort of light.
Number 22 is the Fire Knight's Greatsword. Yes, this weapon is extremely popular right now due to it being bugged in PvP, but in PvE, it is still very good. It is going to be the best faith-based Colossus sword in the game. You can actually get the most damage with a faith infusion compared to all the other Colossus swords. Now, in terms of every other infusion, it's not going to do as well. However, this one does just get the best moveset out of all the Colossus swords too. It gets the Godslayer's Greatsword light attack combo combined with his right-hander heavy, which that means that you're just going to get faster light attack combos and a poking attack. That's everything that you really need when it comes to this weapon. That's combined into one big little package. Now the fact that it is doing that split fire damage isn't going to really help, but it's going to make it that other weapons that it's going to up damage it. Specifically when it comes to strength-based builds, even with the faster moveset that it does have, it is not going to up DPS like the other options. Because the moveset isn't that much faster, it's only like a few frames. But when it comes to a faith-based weapon, it's not going to really get much better than this one. Number 21, the Flower Stone Gavel. We were so close to getting our first Faith Arcane weapon, but unfortunately, Number 20, the Spear of the Impaler. Now, I did this touch on this weapon yesterday when I talked about the boss weapon ranking list. I'm not going to go into too much detail. It is a weapon that gets very high damage with its skill. It is a great spear, which they do get some very nice amounts of points damage. The heavy attack, I do not like. It is going to be a projectile that does not do much damage, consumes a lot of stamina, only does like 9 stance damage, which is very upsetting because heavy attacks tend to be like the only way to pop stance breaks quickly, especially when you use a skill that's just meant for high damaging attacks. It actually does get a very good dexterity and faith-based scaling, so at higher levels you can definitely just decimate bosses when landing the entire skill combo. It's going to be a longer animation that doesn't get much hyper armor, so against certain types of bosses that is not going to let you get it up. But if they do, then it's kind of a GG. Number 19, Len's Song. Now this one might be a little bit of my bias creeping in because it's like one of my like a B scaling in faith. Number 18, Dane's Footwork. Now this is going to be one of 2 hand-to-hand weapons, the other one being the Dryleaf parts. Actually, I do prefer this one better. The difference is being that this one does get more kicking attacks, the other one gets more fist-based combat. Now if you do want like a little bit more of a breakdown, the Dane Footwork actually does get more stance damage on your light attacks, whereas the Dryleaf actually does get more stance damage on your charged heavy attacks, which typically I do prefer more, but there are going to be 2 more things that the Dane's Footwork actually has going for it. One is going to be its synergy with the Shattered Stone Talisman. That is just going to boost the damage of all of your kicking attacks by 10%, so that is just going to equal more damage with the Dane's Footwork. And it also just hits twice with the guard counter. I went over it yesterday in my top 5 build video, and it might potentially just be a bug, but this thing literally just hits twice, whereas the Dryleaf parts only hit it once. So this is literally doing 40 stance damage and twice as much damage on a guard countering attack. But in terms of the movesets of hand-to-hand weapons themselves, they can be pretty good. They're nice and quick. They can help proc the multi-hit talismans, and most players are not going to like them more than fist-based weapons. These things just do more damage, higher DPS, more stance damage. But the major thing that you have going for them is going to be some of their weapon skill options. They can get Driving Whirlwind and Palm Blast. Driving Whirlwind can actually stun up smaller enemies and do some nice damage. Now, Palm Blast, I think, is going to be the better option. This thing is a high damaging attack. Does about 33 stance damage, and this has infinite hyper armor. You never get staggered out of this thing, and it can just be a guaranteed attack. Now, when fighting these DLC bosses that hit super duper hard and move really quickly, probably not going to be the most useful skill, but against almost anything else in the game, it definitely is. Number 17, the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana. Now, yes, this being a Great Katana, one of the new classes, they're very comparable to Curved Greatswords in terms of their speeds and damage. Curved Greatswords might just have higher DPS. They also do get faster heavy attacks too. But the benefit of the Great Katanas is going to be their movesets and the fact that they all get passive bleed. Their movesets are just incredible. They get nice mix-ups of vertical, poking, and horizontal swipes with that heavy attack that really fast. Multiple enemies at once very easily, and those poking attacks can combo in after every single move, and these can have very nice amounts of range. And with how fast some poking attacks actually can come out, it can result in very quick stun locks. Now for the Dragon Hunter in particular, this is just going to be a quality-based Great Katana, doesn't get scalings in anything else, so it's not going to get good synergy with spells. You can't improve that blood loss build-up that it does get, but its skill, Dragon Wound Slap for 18 FP, is going to do a quick slashing attack that can do some nice amounts of damage. You can fully charge it, turn it into a projectile that can make it do even more damage, and actually do some decent stance damage. At point-blank range, it can do 33 stance, the projectile doing 17. Now, when paired alongside things like the Shard of Alexander and the Godfrey's Icon, it can do some nice damage, but it's not going to be like ground-breaking damage. There are a lot of other skills in this game that can hit a lot harder than this, even when you're using those things against dragons too, because yes, this thing does get bonus damage against dragons. But the major benefit of this weapon is going to be its ease of use. Like, you get lots of hyper armor, it's a quick projectile, it does physical damage, it's not that expensive, it's easy to build around, it's just a solid weapon. Number 16, Death Knight's Foot Axe. This is a hand axe that does get split lightning damage, also gets a strength and faith-based scaling. Thank the Lord we finally have a faith lightning weapon. Now, in terms of the weapon itself, I despise power stance axe combos. They're just horrendous. There is no other way to say it. Probably not the worst moveset in the game. I've seen worse. But there is next to no redeeming factors about this moveset. It's slow. They hit one after the other, of which that is going to result in longer animations and really bad DPS. And this is true for like every single one of its attacks. Light attacks, heavy, jumping, rolling attacks. None of them hit simultaneously and all have long animations. And these things get like a little bit more than like straight sword damage. And when you look at things like straight sword and curved sword movesets, those power sets and combos hit at the same time, and they're just much quicker. Now, it's obviously still going to be viable. It's not like the combo's not going to work or not going to do good damage. It can work, but the reason why it's going to be in the top 25 is obviously because of its skill, Blink Bolt, Twin Axe. For 8 FP, you do a Blink Bolting attack, which is like an Ashura in this game, but you do get the option of a follow-up Spinning Lightning attack for only an additional 10 FP, and this attack can do 30 stance damage, stun lock enemies, block the multi-hit talismans, and this result in high amounts of damage in general. It is a very solid skill, and it is very fun to use. Like, just being able to iframe dodge close to the enemy and hit them with a spinning attack is very satisfying. Now, this whole spin can be somewhat of a longer animation. We do large very fast, so sometimes it can just go past the enemy. But in terms of the damage, the stance damage, the fact that you get an inherent iframe dodge, it's definitely deserving of being in the top 25. Number 15 is Smith Strip Shield. Now, the main reason this is going to get this time again is primarily because of a bug. If it wasn't for that bug, it'd probably still be at the top 25, but probably to get lower on the list. But yeah, this is going to be just a small shield. I wouldn't ever block with it because it sucks as a shield. But the benefit is going to be its skill, Viscous Health, for only 3 FP and barely like any stamina. You do this really quick throwing attack that has a little bit of a delayed effect. And having a delayed effect means that enemies are just not going to be able to dodge it, and it's just going to hit every single time. And the damage can be really good, especially when paired alongside the Shard of Alexander and the Slipping Talisman. And for only 3 FP, you can't go wrong. Now, the bug comes into play when you have your weapon is buffed. Like, when your main weapon is buffed, it also has a buff onto the shield. So you can put on something like Roaring Touch Zone in your main hand, and then throw the shield, and it's going to be doing 80% more damage every single time until the buff wears off. And yeah, the gameplay is not just speaking for itself. For how easy it is to use, and how cheap it is for this much damage, yeah, it shouldn't really be a thing. Number 14, the Great Katana. Just the regular, basic Great Katana. Now, I already talked about the moveset when I talked about the Dragon Hunter, so I'm not going to go into that again. But the reason why I like this one better is because you can infuse it. So it gets a lot more versatility, and there are lots of skills that are very well paired alongside a Great Katana. Because you can get everything for like 4 swords, 4 poking attacks, even some of like the smaller basic skills. And how large and heavy some of you can be, and the fact that it's going to bleed, certain skills can make those very broken combinations. Now there is going to be a unit overhead stance that is specific to the Great Katana. It's not going to be the most amazing skill, but the fact that it does give you a stance and an option to do one attack or a triple slamming attack is going to be very good. It can help you proc those status effects very quickly. Not going to do the most amazing amount of stance damage, but you can't really go wrong with it. That's cool. Now out of all the beast balls, Number 11, the Backhand Blades. Now this is going to be one of the new weapon classes in this game, and I consider this one to be the best one. In almost every single infusion, this one is just going to get the most amount of damage, and it helps to mess the soldier spin. Number 5, the Death Knight's Long Arc. Can't go wrong, it's just an amazing weapon. Number 4, the Founts. This is going to be one of 3 head curve swords in this DLC. Don't know why they decided to add 3 head curve swords when they could have made these things backhanded blades, but that doesn't matter. Because this weapon is, yeah, it's really good. Obviously going to get the power sense and curve sword moveset, which is just probably the best power sense combo in the game. Incredible light attacks, those jumping and running attacks are just busted. They just hit so many times and just do lots of damage. And on top of that, this weapon just gets bleed, so that's just going to result in even more damage. Now, yes, things like the Power Sense Bandit's Curve Sword or the Scavenger's Curve Sword are just going to perform better when it comes to these combos, but the Phalanx gets a unique skill in Revenge's Blade. For 15 FP, you do this nice running attack that you can't fully charge to close in the distance really quickly in this nice damaging slashing attack that only consumes 15 FP. And best of all yet, you can do a follow-up attack for only 10 FP that does this whole like swiping attack that just stun locks these smaller enemies, procs blades so incredibly fast, and just does stupid amounts of damage. Like you can just lock like the whole hit items, Gunter's Icon, Shadow of Alexander, everything is just bad. Even if you go up against a boss that doesn't give you an opening long enough, one, if you position yourself correctly and actually charge in there with this skill, you can just use the follow-up input as your initial attack when you do have your opening, and more likely than not, it's going to work. And even if it didn't work, you could just use a light attack combo because of the Power Sense Curve Sword that gets bleed. It's like basically no way to mess up with this weapon. Number 3 is Claws of Night. Now, as I talked about a bunch of times, the claw weapon class is just one of the best. It outputs probably the highest DPS in the entire game, and all these things get status effects, which they can proc them just as fast. They also do get higher crit damage as well, which all those things are just as true for the Claws of Night. It's going to be a pure dexterity scaling type weapon, does get passive bleed, does get so enjoy it while you can. Number 1, all of the perfume bottles that can be infused because, well, let's use these things. Number 2, the Blood Fiend's Arm. This is a colossal weapon of which does get a strict arcane and strength-based scaling. Now the funny thing is that you can infuse it, meaning that when you go into a bleed-based infusion, it doubles down into that arcane stat, which gives you a B scaling in arcane with a bleed infusion, which is just unprecedented, that like never happens. And combined with the Great Club heavy attack that does a quick downward slam that leaves a blood-based AoE that also does scale with arcane, you're going to be fucking bleed on almost every single charged heavy attack, and also be doing upwards of like 50 stance damage. Yeah, this thing is broken, it's probably going to get nerfed, so enjoy it while you can. Number 1, all of the perfume bottles that can be infused because Rolling Sparks is a broken Ash of War, does stupid amounts of damage, you throw it at the ground, and then all the explosions just happen at once, and it does like over 30k, 40k damage, doesn't matter what it is, everything's just gonna die in front of you.
Bandai Namco. Oh. Mm.